to do something that we couldn't do by ourselves, right? It's the presupposition of the theory, right? That there's a reason that we came together was to have it better. So here's one of these things that the state promises us that we'll have better, right? Education for the children. But, we don't even have to leave the basically the surrounding area to have. We've had everything from the school officers to bus drivers to kindergarten teachers doing abhorrent things. And this flies in the face of freedom. It flies in the face of the proper use of state power. These people are often shielded. The damages they do to people is insidious and it's long lasting. And I think that it's coupled with the fact that they're an authority in some form that they're able to get away with it. Uh, and like I said, with the schools particularly, I think it's worth driving the wedge to make people think about just trusting everything the government says. Here, little Johnny, little Julie, get on the bus, go to the school. I went to open house and met all the teachers. Well, did you meet the school cop? Did you meet the bus driver? I mean, and how long did you meet them? I think it's a serious issue when, like, every episode, just about every episode, there's something like this in the local area. And, you don't have to go far. And then if you go too far, you start running into where it's happening up in Dallas or where it's happening over in New
or in the
Orleans.
top levels of government.
Yeah. So I think it's insidious. I think it's something that we do need to remind people it's going on this severely. Maybe it wasn't always, or maybe it always was, and before people couldn't talk about it. But thank goodness with KPFT we have this opportunity. I think it's something to do with power. And
I agree. I think that's definitely something to do with it. I don't know if we covered this on the show, but I'll just briefly mention it. I wrote an article about a week or two ago about this massive lawsuit going on with the Boy Scouts, and it's a similar thing. Now that the statute, I think we did mention it, statute of limitation laws have changed, so there's these big lawsuits coming out against Boy Scouts, and the lawsuit alleges that, in their own words, that the Boy Scouts of America has become a magnet for tens of thousands of pedophiles because, much like the Catholic Church, the Boy Scouts of America, when they did get accusations and people talking about children being abused, they would just either get rid of the guy or send him to a different, city or whatever they can. And so the worst part is that they maintained a secret list of all the events. Like, so when there was an incident, they did catalog it. So, they had this information. And meanwhile, for those who don't know, Boy Scouts of America does get some taxpayer funding through, I can't remember what the specific congressional fund is or whatever, but it's just an example that um, the way that these things can happen, right? And so I think you're right, Johnny. I think it's a combination of, like, if you are into that sort of thing, abusing kids or just being whatever, and you see an opportunity where you're surrounded by kids and where people are giving you lots of trust, and like you said, Micah, maybe they're like, okay, they spend 10 minutes to meet a teacher one time a year, and they're like, okay, cool, and
and I
maybe,
think it's
I mean,
important
it's
because we
messed
need.
up to think about, but they're probably sitting there looking around like
It
nobody's paying attention.
it summarizes the whole blind belief in this authority and everything being safe. Yet we see how many more people just got it. A dozen more added to the brain injury list that originally we just heard had headaches. I mean, it's constantly moving the goalpost. I think it's important that we do trouble this situation. As long as these cases are being spoken about and the news is getting out, then I think we need to go a little bit deeper than just talking about, oh, there was this guy who did this thing or
Well,
whatever.
that's why I wanted to stop and kind of ask you to elaborate on to the listeners, because it can, I think if we just go, oh, here's another story, here's another story, there's not really the conversation about why is this everywhere. I mean, I'll no, no, I understand. All I know is that when I was younger, my mom told me that if somebody ever told me to do something, whether it was a cop or a principal or a teacher or whatever, if I knew that it was wrong, for me to not do it and just to come tell her immediately, and that I wouldn't be in any trouble. And that, I feel like those sort of messages go a long way with kids, to kind of establishing that rapport and, like, with your child, of being able to communicate. Because a lot of times, if you read the cases of victims, what they will say is they were afraid to speak out, or the person will threaten them, right? And sort of say, like, oh, you're going to look this way. They'll try to manipulate them
And
basically.
also with like the children, they sometimes they are do it in such a way that the kid doesn't always even know,
Sure, it's
you
like
know?
subtle, and then
Yeah.
later on they realize like, oh, I was being manipulated.
Yes. A- And, as far as that goes, it turns out that Victoria police are checking into a member of the clergy for touching 10-year-olds. So I don't really go too much into the church ones. I imagine it's the same thing, but I do typically get into the ISD ones because that's, taxpayer money, uh, and it's problematic in a social contract theory sort of way,
Yeah.
while the other is just abuse of power.
Well, on the whole Boy Scouts thing, when I wrote that article, I had somebody email me and tell me thank you because they were abused while they were in the Boy Scouts and appreciated me, you know, kind of sharing the real picture of what was going on. And Johnny, you talk about solutions. Just side note, Louisiana just made it legal to chemically castrate pedophiles and child abusers. I don't know if that's some people. Yeah, well, if you
Well,
do want to call in,
you can
we
hit us up on the chat on YouTube.
but we do encourage you to call in. If you do want to call in, we do encourage you to call in to support KPFT because the conversations you're hearing right now, these are the kind of things that, again, you're not going to hear this discussion. And I know I've got a few stories. Mike has got a few stories. We're going to play a quick song. There's things happening here that you won't hear anywhere else on the FM dial. And I would even say anywhere else on KPFT. You want to take a quick music
We
break?
need to.
I know
We
we
need
got so
to.
much to cover. We're going to go to a quick music break, guys. We're going to get right back into it. If you feel like calling in to make a contribution, let those phones ring 713-526-5738. This is Freethinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston. What are we going to hear, Johnny?
All right, yeah, I've had a long week, and this isn't a local band, but it's a song that someone else might maybe hear. This is AFI in their early days. The song's called Let It Be Broke.
Nice. Cool. All right, we'll be right back. Oh, let's see. Let's talk to them for a second.
All right, we're
Sorry
still
about
live.
that. 1 second.
Yes, we're going to have some music. We love music.
AFI, that's cool. I haven't heard AFI on the show
I saw them
before.
at Warehouse Live. I totally forgot about them and didn't know who they were, and I think I asked you.
All right, let's do it. Old school AFI. We'll be right back.
Are we going to talk to them? Are we going to play music?
Hey guys, what's up, y'all? Thank you for watching. And we tried to do the live stream first, and I don't know what happened. It kept freezing, or it was like double sound. It was going back and playing the beginning plus the current audio, so they couldn't understand half what we were saying. So you missed about half the show, but we're still live here on KPFT 90.1 here in Houston for another 20 minutes or so. What do you got coming up?
Oh my God. Well, shit. I should have more to talk about right now, shouldn't I?
We'll just mention a couple things we're going to get
We're going
into.
to talk about how the schools pay for the contract of the school resource officers and what, kind of some of that. I know we got more to get into. We got into a lot of stuff already.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you guys missed some of it. But again, you can always, if you're watching on YouTube, you can
I got
go back.
another minute-long song if y'all want.
That's cool.
They're
You
both
come and
like
say
super
hi.
short.
Johnny's here with us. But yeah, if the video ever goes down, you can always visit kpft.org/listen. It'll show you in a second. That's behind. You can always go to kpft.org/listen and just tune in through the website if it goes down, if the radio, the live stream goes down. I'm going to touch on, there's another OPCW Syria leak update. I'm just briefly going to mention that you guys know hundreds of cities around the world protested 5G this weekend. The U.S. government is officially now funding geoengineering, which is definitely a controversial topic. And I got a report that your smart vehicle is recording your every move. I learned a lot about that. Anytime you plug your phone, even just the USB thing, you don't even have to connect Bluetooth. As soon as you plug into that car's computer, they can download all of your phone calls, your history, and that is stored on an internal computer that people with knowledge can.
Now I have a computer
gather.
and I can remember what's going on. So I guess there's the flogging in Indonesia. I was going to mention that briefly. We've got do subprime loans, auto loans threaten the U.S. economy. Like a $45,000 loan for a $27,000 ride. What else? What else? Got a bunch more coming up.
Lots of stories to cover.
We don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time. We're going to throw it back, let you try to hear some of the music. And again, if you guys hear a faint voice in the background, it's Johnny in the other studio. We haven't got everything totally figured out, so you can't hear him yet. But I'm going to be gone for the next 4 weeks. Hopefully the guys will get it figured out. You'll be able to hear Johnny, the music, and everything clean and clear. But for the moment, we have to put the headphones near you and hope that you can hear that as good as possible. So
We're gonna get better. We
we do
promise.
apologize for the
We're gonna give you more stuff.
less than stellar live stream sometimes, but we think it's important enough to bring it to you and share it with you. So
And we love it because we love the chat. We
Doing
love the
all right.
engagement that we get there that we
What
really
else,
don't
what
even
else,
get
what
from the
else?
phones. The phones
Got a
do
bunch more
call and
stuff.
people challenge us and
lots of stories to
engage
We
cover.
with
don't have a
us.
lot of
But
time.
Yeah, we don't have a
I
lot
see
of time.
there's far
We're gonna
more
throw-
potential with the live stream, and I'm stoked about more music, more stuff. Yeah, thanks everyone.
All right, we're going to go back to the music and we'll be back on the radio in just a second. Just making sure that their hearing's good.
I thought I had this video. What happened? All right.
All
That's
right,
good.
welcome back to Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston. We just heard who, Johnny? I love their old school stuff.
Miss Murder.
All right, so
Nice.
AFI and Reagan era rejects. Everybody check them out. All right, let's dive right into it. We got 14, 15 minutes. We're going
I'm
to
just
cover
gonna
the
hit some of
news.
this stuff
We'll
fast
just go
because
back and forth. This is lightning round.
Yeah.
Lightning round here.
there's time for reflection, but we had that.
Now it's time to cover some news.
The federal budget deficit will exceed $1 trillion indefinitely now, the Congressional Budget Officer says, budget office. So I thought that's pretty interesting. They're not even going to try to pretend anymore. The agency, Congress's nonpartisan group for budget experts, said that on the budget, the annual deficit would reach $1 trillion for fiscal year 2020, up from 984 billion the year before, and then rise in future years to roughly 1.7 trillion dollars in 2030. That's a lot of money to owe. So yeah, not since World War II has the country seen deficits during times of low unemployment that are as large as those that we project, nor in the past century has it experienced large deficits for as long as we project. So I don't know, maybe we
At
shouldn't
some point, it seems like
borrow
that
so
debt
much.
is going to have to be dealt with.
Yeah. Uh-huh. All kinds of people, all kinds of other foreign governments everywhere. And do we owe? I guess we do, because they're going to come tax you for it until.
But the whole thing, of course, we know is a sham built upon, like, for at least one part of it, the Federal Reserve System, which is, run by private bankers, and, that's who we quote unquote owe. And then there's lots of other people. think
Speaking
we
of
owe them.
private bankers, I'd love to hit this one real quick because it just segues right into it. Do subprime auto loans threaten the U.S. economy? We've been hearing about subprime auto loans for some time now. And I think almost since the time subprime mortgage kind of faded to the background. With partisan division as deep as ever, both sides seem to agree that they want to avoid a financial crisis, though. Yeah, maybe just on the surface. And forecasters have recently identified subprime auto loans as an existential threat to the economy. And some of the headlines are eye-catching and scary, such as a $45,000 loan for a $27,000 ride. More borrowers are going underwater on car loans. Underwater consumers are treating cars a lot like houses during the subprime mortgage crisis. These and more are various headlines out there. But is it true? Are subprime auto loans the new financial cancer threatening households and the economy? People say they're not. Well, worries about subprime auto loans, which offer higher interest loans to riskier borrowers, are ill-founded. This argument comes from Real Clear Policy and based on misleading data and faulty analogies. So yeah, sometimes things look the same, but
just a
yeah. And some do, they do, and they're just like, how much a month and for how long, and then it goes up. Oh, okay, I can make it, and in the meantime, I get to drive this Bentley.
Well, I want to remind the listeners that for those who are unaware of subprime loans, I mean, this is the same thing. Financial crisis. It was housing,
Yeah.
then this is auto, but still the same sort of financial trick, you could say. And there's lots of good movies out there that cover that. I'm gonna throw a couple out there right now, Micah, real quick. One, just to recap our guest from a few weeks ago, we talked with the local researchers here at UT Health who are just researching psilocybin mushrooms for treatment-resistant depression. And just this week, yet another study shows how psilocybin can significantly help with anxiety and depression. The new study says a single dose of magic mushrooms can reduce stress and anxiety in cancer patients for up to 5 years. So just throwing that one out there in case anyone wants to dive more into that.
It's amazing when they have lockdowns on stuff. Like earlier, we were talking about not being able to discuss the health effects of the towers. When they have lockdowns on stuff like the drugs and stuff, how people can't do research and discoveries such as you're speaking about with psilocybin mushrooms aren't found. But through history, we see different groups of people using them for various reasons.
And it's crazy because, right, I mean, just like with prohibition and the drug war in general, you can go back to the late 70s, early 80s, and people were being given things like MDMA from their therapist as a therapeutic tool. And then the whole psychedelic, movement led to the government banning and making things like LSD, psilocybin, MDMA all illegal. And here we are 40, 50 years later, and they're like, wait, maybe there is something to this. Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, they claim that, oh, those old studies weren't good, they weren't done, with high enough quality, so we have to do them again. But again, my point here is that in the 50-year interim, how many people's lives are ruined for something that now they're again admitting, oh, by the way, this is kind
Nobody
of a
that
medicine.
let a pesky little law not get in their way.
One other one here. As of just the last week or so, the U.S. government is now officially funding the study of geoengineering. Geoengineering, of course, a very highly controversial science that deals with mass modification and engineering of the climate and the weather. Yes, you heard that. That is no conspiracy. There's no question about it. It's just a method that the U.S. government and other governments around the world and scientists are claiming will help them in fighting man-made climate change, particularly using what they call solar radiation management, which involves spraying particulates, aerosols, out of the back of planes, strontium, barium, aluminum.
Like chemicals in a trail?
Oh, I mean, that's the thing, though, right? So the
We're
studies,
using robots.
some of the small studies that have been done using climate models have shown, okay, well, you can do that, and maybe you help one part of the Earth, but then you cause drought in another part of the Earth. Or one study said that if we start geoengineering, then you can't
Stuck
stop,
on it.
because once you start doing it, if you actually stop, you might cause a massive increase in heat. So it's like, basically, if we start doing this, which some people believe is already happening, then you can't stop. And another study warned that we could lose blue skies, that it could cause like a permanent whitening of the sky and a haze of the sky. So as we enter this era now, maybe we need to look to future.
We need new solutions. Right, there
But
you go.
the two articles I just covered, the one on psilocybin and geoengineering, can be found at themindunleashed.com. Those are written by me and a friend, and you can dive more into that. It's a topic that we have covered for years, and as I said, it's very controversial. It's now being pitched as and we've said this for a while too, the last ditch or the plan B. If humanity can't figure out climate change, well, then we're just going to go ahead and spray the skies and figure it all out. So that's one, and last one I'll
If
throw
these
your way.
fridges are so smart, they can deal with it.
Last one I'll throw your way on that whole smart thing, right? I just put this article together. Your smart vehicle is recording your every move. Smart vehicles are monitoring drivers, and they're a little legal protection for
Got a
consumers.
dumb vehicle.
Some
but
of
it's
you who have
good.
heard of the Consumer Electronics Show, or simply CES, it happens every year. It's the biggest consumer electronics show in the world. And every year, all the companies come to show off the new gadgets. What's going to be hot in the next year? 5G, of course, is on everybody's lips. This year, though, Amazon, Intel, Qualcomm, and BlackBerry were among companies that are seeking partnerships with automakers who are also searching for methods to monetize the data gathered by the vehicles. That's right. Those computers in your car, especially newer models, are gathering all kinds of information about you, and companies want access to that. They want to monetize it. They want to use it to sell you things. They want to use it to sell you cheaper
Can I
insurance.
sell it to them?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is we should be the ones in control of it, right? But if you're using their car and you don't know how to access those computers, and those computers are sending data back to some server that they own, it's not your data. And I posted this article, the Mind Unleashed posted, and there's people like, well, who cares? Let them spy on me talking about yoga in my car, this and that. It's so frustrating to me how people don't quite
That's
get
all
the
you do in your
importance of
car?
privacy. Well, I mean, even it's that old adage of, oh, well, if you have nothing to hide, right? It's BS. Look, privacy is important to liberty, to being free, to being able to maintain the liberties that we love here in the United States and around the world. Without
Well, I think
privacy,
the
those
whole,
can be taken from you.
furthermore, the number one thing I think we need to do is deal with that argument that you put forth. The argument that if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't worry about it. Well, that's not true. Lots of things to hide that aren't illegal. Lots of things to hide, like maybe you have a child with Down syndrome, or like maybe there's some things that your employer doesn't need to know. Yeah,
Well, and
maybe family members are on medicines or something like that.
little
That
details that you don't even think about
yeah.
that create a profile on you, like you said, your medicine, your healthcare, your visits, your religious places of worship.
Well, you don't need all your kids' friends that, like, say you have a kid with a special need of some sort that it seems functional or whatever. Maybe you don't want that revealed to the whole school.
Well, and then Johnny also just made a good point a moment ago that thinking of the sort of having the foresight to see that somebody in the future, what maybe you don't think it's Donald Trump, maybe you don't think it's going to be Bernie Sanders or whatever, but somebody
Bernie Trump.
could potentially have this access to this data and think about like, oh wow, we now have your whole history between your Facebook, between your car, between your smartphone, between your smart fridge and your smart house. We know everything about your life. How many different ways do you use to get against people?
You could use Ebola rap against them. China. Sesame credit.
Yeah, I mean it's already happening in China. Yeah,
Tell a
exactly.
story.
Exactly. Tell a story about you, whether it's real or not.
They turned out that we were talking about constables earlier. There's this thing called the Bolo Wrap. I had to look it up. It basically is they're saying it'll be less dangerous than tasers. It shoots like a lariat, like a lasso around you, and it's like this new one, Wrap Technologies. This thing just shoots out. It's fast. So I was like, I don't know. I guess they'll find ways to abuse it, but hey, it does sound like it might be a little safer. Yeah, around the throat, choke you out. Says
Totally
that
choked out.
one other thing I noted here that I thought was kind of important. We do talk about growing food and such, but farm bankruptcies are up in 2019 as well. Um, yeah, up 33%. Chapter 12 bankruptcies. Yeah, that's pretty severe. And during the 2019 calendar year, there were 595 Chapter 12 family farm bankruptcies, up nearly 100 filings from 2018, and the highest level since 2017. Yeah, it was hard to be a farmer. It really is, as far as a business.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, you're moving away from the era of small farmers and only a few industrial farms or a few companies that control industrial factory farms, and I think that now they're
There's
spread. I mean,
farms
you still got
everywhere.
Iowa, like all over the Midwest. There's lots of big farms. Of course, a lot of them are just GMO corn, owned by Monsanto and their subsidiary, or Bayer Monsanto. I'm going to throw another one your way. Just a continuing story we've covered in the leaks coming from the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons.
I guess buying good food might help more of the farms too,
Support good
because you're not
farms.
getting as much agribusiness food, right? Yeah,
So
help my small
this
farm.
story that we've been covering for months, the OPCW leaks, again, April 2018. You guys remember? I mean, there's been a bunch of them, so I won't hold it against you if you don't remember exactly. But in April 2018, we were told that there was a gas attack by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in Douma, Syria. And as we've talked about for the past months, several whistleblowers have come forward. Leaked documents have come forward from the OPCW, which is supposedly this international body that just goes in to investigate chemical attacks. And they put forth a final report claiming that yes, there was chlorine gas attack. Yes, it's connected to the Syrian government. But we've now found that some of the preliminary reports written by the team that was actually on the ground completely contradict that. We also told you and did an interview with Newsweek, former Newsweek journalist Tarak Haddad, who tried to write about this in the mainstream and was told he couldn't, and he had to resign in order to be able to speak the truth about the situation. Now, just this last week, we had another former investigator with the OPCW speaking at the United Nations Security Council. His name is Ian Henderson, and on January 20th, he testified at the UN Security Council meeting about the fact-finding mission. He worked for the OPCW for 12 years, and what he told them was that the fact-finding mission had serious misgivings that a chemical attack had occurred. He told the UN City Council that the OPCW had rejected the research from the team that was on the ground, dismissed the entire team, and produced a report that completely contradicted their initial findings. And he said that he doesn't consider himself a whistleblower and felt that the UN Security Council was the legitimate and appropriate forum to explain these concerns. And again, so this is happening at the United Nations. This isn't just something you can easily dismiss. Of course, no surprise, Micah. This event was in part organized by Russia, so people are attacking it, saying like, "Oh, well, that means it's just all, it's all Russian propaganda." But it's still an official UN Security Council event with UN officials listening to former investigators from the OPCW as they say, "You are being lied to. This report is not reflective of what we found." So I just want to keep that in your mind. That there's so many lies being put forth by the mainstream, the deadstream media. That's why we do what we do here at Freethinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT. We try to contradict and expose the lies that are out there in the mainstream, and sometimes lies even in the alternative media.
For sure. It's been a fun episode where we are winding down now. I did have one thing that I did want to mention. I just sometimes am annoyed by the way news is presented. Check it out. Crosby ISD board approves 444,000, excuse me, yeah, almost $500,000 contract to keep Harris County deputies as school resource officers. Okay. All right. And then it just goes straight to Crosby's ISD's campuses will continue to be protected by police officers. What? You mean like if they didn't give these people an extra $500,000, they wouldn't get their protection money? I mean, they wouldn't be protected? Like what? There's no Crosby police? Like, I really don't understand that. I mean, it's this way they're getting, like, neighborhoods pay contract deputies. Now these schools are paying for school police officers. Yeah, I mean, really, like, what happened to the police just policing the area? I don't know. It just seems a little bit strange to me.
Police policing,
Yeah.
police protecting the people in charge. And I want to throw a shout out to everybody who are here in Houston and around the world who came out this past weekend to raise awareness about the 5G rollout. We had over 250 cities, and unfortunately not much in the U.S., some in the U.S., but most of it was centered in Europe. There was South Africa. I mean, countries I hadn't heard of in a while, Mike, or hadn't thought about in a while, popping up on the radar and going out there and protesting and rally. There was everything from documentary screenings to teach-ins to again, protests, rallies, and marches. And for those who are interested in learning more about 5G or the Tower Commission that I mentioned earlier, please do look up Houstonians Concerned with 5G or imagineanewhouston.com to get involved in that.
Maybe we should hit some of these comments in the last minute we have here to bring in some of these people.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody who's tuned in via YouTube at The Conscious Resistance. Lots of people listening in. And
somebody speaking about voting with your Federal Reserve notes. That's definitely a good way to work, right? I mean, it is the time of your life that you've traded for it.
Somebody says the justice system is full of I can say that, right?
Half
butt fixers and just there to make us believe